Hello, beautiful people of Africa and the world at large. Welcome to this weekend edition of our insightful, discursive program. It's Global Insight on the Pan-African Television for you, Media Africa. Today we take focus on the situation in the Middle East, looking at the possible escalation and the ripple effect this can have, not just on the region, but on the global scape as well. Today we want to ask the question if actually the conflict in the Middle East, if it can escalate after the recent development patterning Israel and Iran. The Middle East, it should be noted, has a long been a region characterized by various conflicts and tensions with a complex web of political, religious, social dynamics as well as geopolitical dynamics at play. And now the escalation of the conflict in the Middle East probably have a significant impact on the region itself as well as in the global situation, including aspects like security, regional stability, energy market, refugee crisis, geopolitical rivalry, among others. Thus, during this discursive program Global Insight, we dive into the complex and pressing issue of the escalation in the Middle East and its potential ramifications on the global landscape. It should be noted that recent events in the region have captivated the world's attention, and of course we see countries, blocs calling for this escalation of tension between the parties in the Middle East, primarily given the recent attack by Israel on the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria, and of course also looking at the confrontation and also aspects of genocide orchestrated by Israel in Palestine. What are the present stakes and what will escalation of conflict in this region mean to the region and to the global world at large? This is your discursive, informative program, a knowledge sharing platform where we discuss this very important topical issues affecting the global world at large. You are most welcome. If you are just tuning in, you're welcome to Global Insight on the Pan-African Television. It is for you, Media Africa. And we are joined today by Achilles Eki, who is a banker and international financial expert. He's joining us from the United States of America, particularly from Washington, D.C. Hello to you, Mr. Eki. It's a pleasure having you on today's program.
Hello to you, Ms. WIYDORVEN. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are located around the world. It's a very exciting topic that we're going to be discussing today. I hope a lot of people pay attention to this topic because we have an interesting perspective that we're going to be sharing with you. And I'm mostly very welcome to participate in this debate. Thank you for the invitation, and I'll talk to you later.
And of course, I should appreciate you for giving importance to an event like this that seeks to bring a constructive analysis into what is happening and how we can chart a way forward towards resolving the conflict. Like the whole world seems to be engulfed in some sort of turmoil, but do constructive discussions like this one, or through constructive discussions like this one, we can go a long way to mitigating the consequences of such. Let's take you now to Moscow. We're being joined by RISHABH SETHI, who is an international relations expert, also a civil diplomat. Hello to you, RISHABH. A pleasure having you this day in Global Insight.
Good evening to all of you. Thank you very much, Ms. Clarice, for inviting me to discuss this important global agenda right now that is happening in the world. And we are looking forward for our jointly views about this important agenda that is happening right now in the Middle East, all the geopolitical tensions, which is right now affecting the whole world. Thank you so much and looking forward for our today's joint discussion.
Immense thanks, RISHABH, for accepting and honoring this rendezvous. Indeed, a global topic, a global issue that seeks to analyze the stakes at play at the moment. To the Southern African nation, we are being joined by Good News CADOGAN, who is a Pan-African leadership coach. He's joining us live from South Africa. That should be Johannesburg. Hello to you, Mr. CADOGAN. A pleasure having you on the program this day.
Greetings to you, Clarice, and to my fellow panelists. I'm looking forward to a wonderful debate on these important issues, and I hope that we can, right from the southern tip of Africa, contribute to something that will put the world in a better place. Thank you very much.
Yes, just to reiterate that South Africa remains one of the countries across Africa that has been very vocal on the issue between Israel and Palestine, and we have actually seen the milestone orchestrated by the government of South Africa, particularly the Foreign Relations Minister has been very vocal and on the aspect of the issue between Israel and Palestine. And we are going to Algeria to meet Professor LAEED. Hello to you, Professor. A pleasure having you this day.
Thank you, Clarice, for having me on your show. And my regards to your fellow from USA, from South Africa, and from Russia. I am so pleased and excited to attend this webinar.
It's always a pleasure to note that Algeria happens to be one of those countries that have been advocating for the Palestinian state to have a full members position or status at the United Nations Security Council, a move that was rejected again categorically by the United States of America, where we saw the United Kingdom and Switzerland being giving a motion of abstention from the latest development pertaining the status of Palestine at the United Nations Security Council. I want to accept this opportunity, or take this opportunity to welcome you again, gentlemen, as we indulge now into the complexities of this program. Today we are chatting, looking at if the escalation in the Middle East, and looking at the effect this will have not just on the region but across the global world at large. So our interactions are going to focus on topical issues including religion, culture, geopolitical stakes, geoeconomics, and you can name the rest. And we kick off with you, Professor LAEED. We enter with the holistic approach to the topic for discussion: escalation of tension in the Middle East and the possible effects on the global situation. What have you to say holistically pertaining the latest development which just occurred around the conflict between Israel and Palestine, and Israel and Iran in present day society? Hello to you, Professor LAEED. I think we're going to continue right away with you, ACHILLES, with this presentation, in-depth presentation of our topic this day on the escalation in the Middle East.
Yes.
Okay. Do I go, Professor ZAGHLAMI, or what? Okay.
Hello.
Hello?
Yes, I can hardly hear you, actually. Sorry.
Professor LAEED? Please, you're on air. You can write on with your analysis, looking at holistically what you think about a topic for discussion this day: escalation in the Middle East and the possible impact on global situation.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, Professor LAEED. Due to the interruption, we're going to proceed with you, Achilles EKEU, with the in-depth presentation of our topic this day.
All right, so the Middle East has long been a region of complex geopolitical dynamics, right, with a history of conflicts, rivalries, and foreign interventions. In recent years, there's been a notable escalation in tensions, particularly between Israel and Iran, as well as ongoing conflicts in Syria, Yemen, and other parts of the region. This escalation has raised concerns about the potential for wider regional conflagration and its implications for global stability and security. The current situation in the Middle East is shaped by a number of factors, including long-standing geopolitical rivalries, such as between Iran and Saudi Arabia, who back opposing sides in various regional conflicts. Right, so the United States has been the dominant foreign power in the region, but its influence appears to be declining, while other actors like Russia and Turkey are asserting themselves more. One of the most concerning developments is the intensifying shadow war between Iran and Israel. Recent incidents, such as the suspected Israeli airstrike on Iran's embassy complex in Damascus, and Iran's retaliatory launch of drones and missiles at Israel, have raised fears of a potential escalation spiraling out of control. The ongoing war in Gaza between Israel and Hamas since October 2023 has further complicated the situation, with Iran supporting Hamas and confrontations occurring between Israel and Iran aligned groups in various parts of the region. So many countries in the Middle East, especially the Gulf Arab states, are deeply concerned about the potential spillover effects of an Iran-Israel conflict on their economies and security. An unchecked escalation could also have far-reaching consequences between the region, beyond the region, given the Middle East's strategic importance as a major source of global oil and gas supply. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. EKEU, for that. Of course, coming to you now, RISHABH SETHI, as an international relations expert, we want to actually understand the stakes at this particular moment. So now, how do the intensifying tensions between Israel, Palestine, and Iran impact particularly the balance of power in the Middle East?
Thank you so much, Ms. Clarice, for your question. You know, being an expert in the sphere of international relations, and from the point of international situation right now globally, when we are talking about Middle East, the war which was already started in the year 2023 in the month of October between the Palestine, Hamas, and Israel, now it has taken to a very serious note, because if you try to see from a different point or different angle, people are now fighting in terms of their religious aspects, and they are trying to create more and more differences between them on the basis of religions. And when we are talking about the Middle East has been one of the most important region in the world in terms of natural resources, in terms of when we talk about oil and gas, in terms of logistics, because that part has connected the whole world in terms of international logistics and international business. So if such situations are happening, the like you see, when in October it has started, it was only between Israel and Hamas. And then somehow indirectly they involved Syria. And slowly they have involved the neighboring countries. And now Iran, Iraq. So much more and more countries are getting involved. So the more it will go in the future into the serious situation, more countries will jump inside and it will get into more worse situation. And what will happen just when we think about business, because each and every country needs economy to grow, it will impact upon fluctuations, upon growing the prices of products in all over the world. The things will get expensive. Why? Because everything is connected with oil and gas, with the natural resources, because with that you cannot work. If you see the logistics in the Red Sea, in the Black Sea, how the international logistics will get affected because of this conflict, this situation, it will create much more worse situation in the future. And the only way it has to be stopped or it has to be controlled only by the way of diplomacy, the way of discussion, to understand. And you already saw what Israel has done just a day before, because their leader has said completely, we are not ready to have a discussion, we don't want to talk. And this would not be a solution. If you want to come to a conclusion, you need to have an open discussion, because without that it will create much more and much serious and worse situation in the future, because this retaliation from both the sides will increase if they will not stop. So that is what I want to say as of now. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Rishabh. And coming to you, Good News Cadogan, we are looking and answering the question if there will be an escalation in the Middle East, and what effect or the ripple effect this can have on the global situation. And now coming to you, we are looking at the Middle East, and we know that some parts of Africa, particularly Egypt and other countries, are closer to this region in turmoil. So the question is, what do you think can be done, particularly because if SETI underlined that we need a strong diplomacy to be able to resolve the crisis. In your own perspective, what are the present stakes in the Middle East, and what is the way forward?
It is a very complex issue, Clarice, that we are facing in the world. And Africa, as a vulnerable continent, is most likely to suffer a lot from possible escalation in this conflict. As my colleague has said, Prashant, just now, and also from ACHILLES around the issues of trade, you'll find that petroleum, gas, and logistics form that kind of a pressure, because Africa depends on what comes into and out of that region. Secondly, it's about stability, world stability. And the way I see this conflict there, it's more like a proxy war between the East and the West, between the Arab nations and the Europeans. So it has got some level of racial undertones attached to it. You can see in the way in which the international press is reporting how a number of people that die, depending on how they are seen, it's either a massacre or just a skirmish, and a few lives have been lost. There is no equity in terms of how this conflict is being reported. So there is a need, I believe, to actually break up these deeply held beliefs, whereby humanity and humanness is looked at through the lens of a race and also culture. And we can also point it down to history, how these nations and states have been formed historically. And now the shake-up is about questioning the logic behind how these states were set up. And I believe that the world has got some kind of a choice between a unipolar world where there is just one superpower that dictates to the rest of the world, or there is a multipolar world where there is a level of acceptance for that multipolar world, multi-system of values and governments and cultures, so that in the end, the diverse interest of people across the culture divide, across the racial divide, across the religious divide, are accepted as being human. The moment we see each and every human life as a human life, then it's not going to be easy for escalation of this conflict to go into an all-out war. That is what I believe is the key sort of thing that will turn this around, where we have got a uniform view of human life that is not based on race, that is not based on religion, that is not based on culture, but just humanness.
Which is very primordial at the particular moment, and that, of course, Mr. Cadogan explains why countries have been advocating for an end to the what has been termed genocide orchestrated by the Israeli side on the Gaza Strip. And of course, what is the role of international actors on the escalation in the Middle East? Because when we look at particularly the recent event that just happened when Iran retaliated following the attack on its embassy in Damascus, we saw Israel ready to orchestrate more attacks, but when the United Nations or the United States, I beg your pardon, a strong supporter of the Israeli regime, actually made a statement and warned Israel that if it could push forth with this retaliation, and also the fact that if Israel refuses to open a border crossing that will permit aid workers reach out to the vulnerable society with aid of food, it will revise its policies regarding its support for Israel. Now, coming to you, Achilles, with all of these statements which are spoken outwardly by nations pertaining their situation in the Middle East, what can we say are some of the geopolitical implications on the escalation in the Middle East, particularly defining the place of the United States, China, and even Russia, supposed global powers at the moment?
Well, thank you for the question, Clarice. It's United States is very biased in the way it's really running things in the Middle East right now. I noted earlier in my presentation that the United States, power is declining in the region, and we can just look at the situation between Israel and Iran, and to really say if we look at how things unfolded, right, between Iran and Israel. Israel struck two Israeli, Israel attacked the embassy in Damascus a few weeks ago, and a few days ago, and things are going very fast, right? Days looks like weeks. And so Iran decided to retaliate. And so in doing so, Iran, called the United States and told them that they're going to retaliate. The United States did not agree first, and they, it seems like there was a meeting in the area between the representative of Iran and one of the CIA representatives. The CIA director, they met somewhere in the Middle East, and Iran told him that that they are going to retaliate because when we look at Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, with regard to self-defense, that article states clearly that nothing in the present charter will impair the inherent right of individual or collective self-defense, if an armed attack occurs against a member of the United Nations. So this right applies until the Security Council has taken measures necessary to maintain international peace and security, end quote. So they have the right to retaliate according to UN Charter, Article 51. So then Iran proceeded Iran struck 2 Israeli air bases in Nevatim and Ramon with multiple missiles. Iran also struck a command and control facility in Tel Aviv. This is information that we're getting today because we've had better information now after the event happened. So the Israeli, have not been talking about, the fact that some missiles have hit Tel Aviv. And so Iran struck also an intelligence facility in the Golan Heights. So the Israelis, again, aren't talking about it because apparently it was struck multiple times. In addition to that, the Iranians took out at least 5, or more likely more ballistic missile defense sites, that are the launchers and radars on the ground that Israel was using. And then in addition, Iranians did this without inflicting any serious casualties. So there was no civilian casualties, according to reports. And so, but it's showing that Iranians carefully selected their targets to make a point, not just to destroy or kill people, but just to make a point that they can reach Israel, any strategic site in Israel at any time, whether they use their whatever dome shield that the United States provided them, they've proven, and this is all according to reports today, that Iran is in a position now to switch the deterrence. So it has been able to reset its deterrent superiority from Israel to itself now. So this is an important development in terms of geopolitics in that area. And we know that Iran is being supported by Russia, China as well, and North Korea and other countries, right? While Israel has always been backed by the United States. But when we go to the United Nations, and the United States is claiming all the time that they support when it comes to Gaza, to the Palestinian state, they say they support the 2-state solution.
Yeah.
But when the vote comes on the floor, like a couple of days ago, the vote came on the floor, and they were the only country that voted down that proposal. Yeah. So that was very disconcerting around the world, around the Middle East. So we don't understand exactly what is going on with the United States. One day there's, President Joe Biden said, no, they're not going to support what Israel is going to do in terms of retaliation. And I heard the other day that Israel was able to retaliate anyway, but they don't want to confirm it, but it looks like that's what it is. Anyway, we'll find out more in the future. But the United States is very biased, and it's normal that Russia and China make a clear statement to the United States that they need to stand firm in their position so that we can have peace in that region.
Indeed, the goal is to have peace in the Middle East, and which will gradually transcend to global peace. Now, coming to you, SETHI, we are listening to we just listened to Mr. Eke highlighted some key issues pertaining the United Nations Charter, and it brings us to wanting to understand, some of these resolutions propounded by the United Nations were after the 2 world wars, and now we're in the 21st century, and we see that some of these resolutions sometimes are very contradictory, and particularly when it becomes problematic that an individual nation has the propensity or the power to overturn a decision about 10 people. Like we can take the recent case pertaining of the membership of Palestine as at the United Nations, and we saw that the U.S. had the power to overturn the other decisions advocated by other independent countries. So the question is, in terms of international relations, how can the United Nations Security Council relook its some of its resolutions or the prerogatives given to nations, which are actually helping to derail the fast way towards solving a global crisis, or maybe crisis with much massive impacts, especially negative?
Thank you so much, Ms. Clarice. Yes, it's correct that what has happened just a day before during the UNSC Council meeting, and we also that how simply the US has totally used its power, like vetoed their using their power for the Palestine, against the Palestine, that they should not get this permanent seat in the United Nations. And it's a big example for the whole world that if something is required for doing good for the future of the world, so many times the US, who have that power, they use that power in a negative way or in a wrong way, because getting the permanent seat for the Palestine, for their people, for their country, it was very much important, because all the people who are living there have equal rights to live in the world, to raise their voices. And it was totally not agreed that why they have vetoed this power. When we are talking about the rules and the laws of the United Nations, already if you saw from the last more than 2 years, when this special military operation was started in the Donbas region of Russia, how so many rules that has been broken, so many laws that have been totally destroyed and have been vetoed many, many times. So you see the members of the UNSC, the permanent members, the countries, they are itself not respecting those laws which they have made by themselves. What is the role of the UN right now? If you see, the UN itself is not able to sit in that particular council together to come to a conclusion, to try to spread much more peace, but it is not happening. The main mission, it is getting failed. And when I want to add some point, as Mr. EKEU from Washington has just said regarding the situation right now in the Middle East between the Palestine or between the Israel or Iran or Iraq. You always see it's the history that how the Western media will showcase this issue in the global world. They will try to take the advantage. What they want to showcase to the world, that is only for their own interest. That's it. They don't want that the reality should come out to the people, which is much more important. What is happening, the genocide, the people, the families, the children that are dying there from last more than many months, from October when this has all started, until now, it has not stopped. It is increasing in the other neighboring countries, that genocide. Just see the fact, if somebody has attacked your country with some terrorist, that doesn't mean that you will destroy the whole country.
Absolutely.
You should professionally try to find out those people. So the whole world is fighting against the terrorism. So the main goal is not to kill the civil people. What they are doing right now, they're killing the civil population of the country. They are not exactly killing the terrorism. So, okay, the whole world is fighting. It is a global agenda. It's a global problem with each and every country. Second thing also, the West, they will try to take much more advantage and try to control the situation in their benefits. And you see, as Mr. EKEU has said, the US, few days ago, they said they are against Israel to attack back to Iran. But they have also said, okay, we will give you all the required support, military, technology, everything to attack back to Iran. So what does this mean? They are indirectly supporting. if Iran will attack to your country, we will destroy everything, but we will not attack back, but we will give you each technology and everything what is required for you, which is not correct. And don't forget, when we are talking about the multipolar world, because this is an era of multipolar world, not the unipolar world, Iran is the new member of BRICS. We should not forget. It is the equal responsibility of all those countries, especially Russia, India, China, to support. What is the main goal? The main goal is to spread peace, not to increase the conflict, to decrease the conflict and to finish it, to stop the war. This is the main issue, the main point. How we can do only by the way of diplomacy. Of course, now this situation is also getting divided between the US and the Russia. You will see it will happen. The whole world can see, because Israel is being supported by the US, and slowly the West will, of course, jump in between the situation. And then again, the situation will divide it into the two worlds. Again, it will be a big problem. So the main conclusion, BRICS countries now have a very important and equal role in this conflict. Because when we talk about BRICS, BRICS is not like NATO. BRICS is like, we need to support the world, we need development, we need peace, we need to grow business trade between the countries.
Yeah.
We are not like NATO. Okay, we are started to bomb each and every country, like what they did from the last 2 years indirectly in the Donbass region, how they are supporting all the West country, how they are involving in that conflict. They are not coming on the face, but the world knows what reality is happening and going on. So this is the main point I want to conclude, that BRICS plays a very important role in this conflict to destabilize, to make the situation under control. Thank you so much.
And thank you, of course, for highlighting those very important stakes or points pertaining this. Indeed, it is a global issue that needs to be tackled with some sort of diplomacy. And of course, the values and is what of each country is what will define the terms of this diplomacy. Coming back to you, Mr. Cadogan, having listened to all the stakes and of course the rhetorics surrounding the conflict in the Middle East, the role of other powers, and of course you mentioned already, when we want to analyze, we see more of a proxy war in the Middle East, and there is need for it. And also from all the discussions that you people have advocated so far, we also see that there is need to look the domestic policies of these countries involved in the crisis, be it Israel, be it Iran, and be it Palestine. So the question is, what role do domestic policies in each of these countries involved play, of course, countries play in shaping their responses to the escalating tensions? How can the role of their domestic policies in all that is happening?
Thank you very much for the opportunity, Clarice. And again, I am very much in the midst of experts in the colleagues that are sitting with me on this panel.
Absolutely.
I just want to express gratitude for the education that I'm receiving, as much as I'm commenting in my own right through the lenses that I see the world with.
Yeah.
If you look at domestic policy of the different countries, it begins for me with the unit of one human being in the population. What I believe in, how I see myself. Because how I see myself will translate into how I see the next human being.
Absolutely.
And the stability of family in those countries. It forms a critical foundation for that national or domestic policy. From the family, it grows into something that will shape the village, will shape the metro, the town, or the province in which I live as a citizen of that country. How I vote and the relationship between the leaders that are in power in these different countries and the electorate that put them in power is very critical. Because how they shape that domestic policy, it should be either in honoring of the vote that they have received or against that vote because they don't believe that that vote is important. So should there be a higher level of democracy? And I define democracy in a very narrow sense, that the government that is in each of those countries is serving at the behest of the people that put it there, not to serve in its own self as a bunch of a few leaders at the top. And that will translate then into how close that country is to the idea of humanity and equality before the law. Some of these countries, especially if we elevate it to Russia, the United States, China, the United Kingdom, France, because these are the big players who influence some of the players in the Middle East. And if the players in the Middle East are just pandering to whatever that they are getting from their bigger partners, you will then see this narrow nationalism that actually feeds on hate. So if you see the way Israel is playing the role of being the representative of the West in general, everything that they do domestically and also regionally is influenced by those views. They don't actually care about the safety of their own people. They don't care about whether the leaders themselves, the rhetoric and the philosophy that they express, whether it is aligned with the majority people that live in Israel. And if then they purport to be a democracy, and a large number of those people are against war and spilling of blood in the Middle East, especially if led by their own government, then it means they are not serving at the behest of the people. So in order to have regional peace and regional stability, each of the players in the region have to value human life, have to value humanity, have to maintain a very straight and solid line between the one person who is a citizen of that country, whatever country we're talking about here, and also global human values. The way in which the United Nations was set up was to create stability and peace across the world, to prevent wars, to prevent a repeat of what happened around the Second World War. But it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because there is a very narrow view of what nationalism is, and it breeds selfishness. The structure of the United Nations is so outdated that it creates this preferential treatment where one power can just veto and express a vote that denigrates everybody else, that roughshod of everybody, and then in the end, a single view or a unipolar view of the world is what is seen to be the future. The domestic policy of each country is supposed to take three things into account: the past, the present, and the future. To look at the bad history that we come from and to prevent a repeat of that. To analyze what is coming out now in the present moment. What is it that is the driver of these conflicts? And whether going one way or the other in furtherance of that conflict is going to create peace and stability in that region. Beginning with ensuring that the nationalism or the domestic policy that is being pushed is not at the expense of other nations across the region and also around the world. So that is the key here, to make sure that it's really a democratic governance that speaks to that domestic policy, so that the international policy is informed by a domestic policy that is sensitive to human life and human rights.
Indeed, human life and human rights, Mr. Cadogan, just to remind our televiewers joining us that this is Global Insight on For You Media Africa, and we are actually live on YouTube. You can leave your comments pertaining our topic for discussion this day, like and share on For You Media Africa. And of course, we continue with the understanding of the stakes, of course, of war in the world. Coming to you, SETHI, when we listen critically, we see, especially on areas of domestic policy and even foreign policy, if you can liken a little bit what is happening in the Middle East between Israel, Palestine, and now Israel, Iran, to the Russia-Ukraine crisis, you see that there's a particular situation where you see leaders actually lamenting that the fact that they are not receiving external support, and this external support is in terms of military support and trade in arms, and of course citing particularly the United States. You saw Zelensky saying that Ukraine is becoming more and more susceptible or vulnerable because of the fact that the U.S. Congress is yet to deploy aid or some money that will help it continue with the fight. And we come back to the Middle East. We see Israel standing firm, ready to retaliate fiercely. But when a statement comes regarding the maybe redefining policies pertaining their support from the United States, there's some sort of calm and everything. So it brings us to the rhetorics of war and who benefits from the crisis befalling the Middle East and elsewhere in the world, and how the maybe trade in arms is actually helping to fuel this crisis, and what can be done to mitigate it, because actually international laws do not really support trade in arms, because this has actually helped to fuel crisis and turmoil across the global world.
Thank you so much, Ms. Clarice. You had said a very correct thing. If you see the situation right now that is happening in the Middle East, and if you compare it with the situation of the special military operation of Russia and Ukraine, but there is one thing common. If you see the both conflict, because one conflict which is already happening from the last around 2 years, and another conflict which has just happened like a few months ago, but now that situation is getting into also in a serious, much more stage. But the one common thing is that in both these conflicts, whether it's Russia or Iran, these countries are fighting themselves alone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there is nobody to support them. It's clearly, you saw it from yourself also. You was there in these regions and you know the history of these conflicts. But at the same time, now indirectly the Israel is getting supported by the US, and now very soon the West will jump again to support them. So same here, if you see the conflict here in Ukraine, which is totally more than 50 or 70% is supported and fed by the Western countries, their money, their technology, everything. So these countries which are fighting alone, they should respect for their task, what they are doing, what they are trying to do. They are just trying to save their citizens. They are trying to save their country. They are trying to stop the genocide. And the Western powers, they are much more using their resources in a negative way for the more and more destruction. I never understand why these countries who are funding those money and technology for the destruction in the world, why don't they use that resources for their development and peace for their own country? If you see the situation in Europe right now, how much the prices, the products, the gas, everything is getting raised up and up and up. If you talk to the local citizen of these countries, they are even fed up by their leaders. They don't want, nobody wants such war. Everybody wants more peace. We should live for humanity. Everybody saw or read the history of the World War II when it happened. And what, if you see what the world is going right now, in which phase? It is going on the same path. If the conflict is happening between two countries, it is not correct. It is not acceptable to put oil in the fire. If you see the West and the US indirectly, they put oil in the fire rather than to spread more peace. Try to use those resources to feed up those poor people, to those homeless people, to those families, to the young people, because the youth is the future for the development of your country. Why don't you use that resources? You just open the news any week in the US, there are shooting cases. Why don't they control those things within their own country rather than to jump in between the conflicts and the issues of another country? If they are very much interested, they should do it in a more positive way, try to spread peace rather than to supply those arms, military equipments or money to destroy the humanity. If you see the situation, if you see the stance on another side, Russia, India, China, we always have a stance to spread more peace. Always our leaders have taken a position that we don't want any conflicts. We don't want any war in the 21st century. The technology is growing. That doesn't mean that you should use that technology to destroy the human mankind. You should try to use that technology to develop the world and make it a better place to live.
Indeed.
Thank you so much.
Indeed, develop the world and make it a better place to live. And when we talk war, we also look at the economic implications of such, and we know the important role that the Middle East plays in a global economy. Coming to you, Mr. Eke, from the perspective of an economist, and we want to look at or analyze some of the economic consequences which might arise from the conflicts affecting the actually vital waterways and even trade routes in the region, particularly the Middle East.
Well, I mean, if this conflict proceeds in the way it looks like with, each other, Israel that attacks, Iran retaliates, and then Israel retaliates. So if it's still going like that, with the conflict we already have between Ukraine and Russia, it looks like if that continues, we are going to be in a pickle very soon, because if this escalates, what the worst case scenario will be, Iran can shut down the Strait of Hormuz, seizing, recently I think they seized the boat, an Israeli boat or boat that was using the Israeli flag, so it could create a situation where there is a shortage of goods, because the flow of traffic in that region is going to be stopped, and the goods going to the United States, to China, and trade will be a disaster, and all over the world it's going to be very hard to find the regular commodities that we need. So so in terms of economy, it's going to be a disaster if that situation proceeds the way it looks like, unless powers, superpowers get together, or regional powers get together and try to to quash those velleities. I think the major problem in the Middle East is Israel. We've already identified that,
yeah. And
particularly this government in Israel with Netanyahu, Benjamin Netanyahu, who is, absolutely a leader that's been rejected by the Israelis themselves. Only a few faction of extreme rights, people in the parliament, support him, and they're the one, running the country now. So this is why we are fearful that, this can go in any direction at any time without, even the United States being aware. Because what they're trying to do, they're trying to drag the U.S. into that war with Iran. And Netanyahu has a vested interest in blowing up the region, because his political, his political viability, depends on that. Because what happened is, the government, the people of Israel are very angry about the attack from Hamas. Hamas, by the way, who has been created and funded by Benjamin Netanyahu, by Israel, in order to create, two factions between Palestinians, so that they never get that two-state solution that they're yearning for. So so Israel created Hamas, funded Hamas, and then, so that they can fight against Fatah, which is one of the political organization of the Palestinian government. So they can fight together, and then in the meantime, the two-state solution is off the table. But it turns out, Hamas has been, have switched position and have decided to fight for his people, for his own people. And so because of the attack of I think it was October 7, what was that? I don't remember the date. Then they started, October 7, I believe, right? So they were surprised by the attack, and Israel is always known in the world to be one of the most difficult places to go. A very big defense country. It's very, you can penetrate the defense system. But that day, Hamas was able to get into the country and then do whatever they did that day. So, so from that time on, Netanyahu has decided to destroy Hamas, but have never succeeded until today. And all they can do is kill. I think the estimation now is about 35 to 40 million people that have been killed. 40,000 people. I'm sorry, 35 to 40,000 people that have been killed so far. And so it's a complete disaster, and I'm really happy. I was very proud. I was very proud to see South Africa, take those matters into their hands and take it to the ICJ. So it was a good move, and I think we should, we all should, do the same, because what is going on with Israel is it's this guy Netanyahu, who, because he's going to be demoted from his prime minister office because of some crimes that he's committed, he doesn't want to go down by himself. He wants to take everybody down with him, including the United States. So all these attacks that are unprovoked on the Iranian embassy in Damascus, all these attacks in Gaza, trying to create a famine, preventing aid, killing aid workers, it's just on a scale of, no one I've ever heard about this. And I was listening to an ambassador, previous ambassador of the United States in Israel, who was talking about the disaster that Israel is creating, and that is going to be remembering the history of the world, that Israel is committing genocide right now in Palestine. This is a genocide that's been committed, in open view. Everybody is watching, everybody is looking at it, and no one is nobody is lifting any finger. And this is not going to be acceptable. So we have to, stop that situation. The United States has a responsibility to control Netanyahu, who is the faulty guy in that region, who claims, he says, we watched some videos of him not saying to his people that, hey, he controls the United States. He can play with the United States whatever, however he wants, and he can do whatever. The United States is going to stand behind him, and this is true. It's true. So it's being verified again this week, with all the vote and the United Nations, all the military support. Now the Congress is about to send them $14 billion, because of the fact that, this attack from Iran cost Israel about 1.2 billion. This is an estimation. All these, Iron Dome missiles that were used to bring down all these drones, they cost about 1.2 billion dollars. Whereas Iran, it just cost them some thousands of dollars. So it shows that we have to, control Israel. U.S. has to control Israel, and the European people who are always talking both sides of their mouth, We never know where they stand. No one can trust them. They're not trustworthy at all because they all depend on the U.S. for their protection. That's the situation. And so it's going to be hard, for the U.S. to do itself justice and try to, protect the lives of Palestinians. But that's the right thing to do, because if they don't do that, it's going to be just like what they did in South Africa, supporting the apartheid regime, supporting all Rhodesia, all these countries where they supported white supremacists, so they can kill Africans, kill black people. And then when the situation changes, they bring crocodile tears. They try to, pretend that, oh, well, it was blah, blah, blah. So it's always the same rhetoric. We already know this music. We've heard this music before. It's being repeated over and over again. And I think BRICS, just like my friend from Russia mentioned earlier, BRICS has to do something about this. It's time for BRICS to be more organized, to put institutions in place, including military institutions, that can really work to face NATO right now, because NATO is the problem of the world. Those people are liars. They sign agreements like they did with the Minsk agreements. They don't respect it, and then they turn around and complain. The worst part of this is they complain, they accuse the other side of being dishonest when they're the one who are really dishonest. And so we have to face those people head on so that we can have a balance of power in the world today. Because the issue today is we have no balance of power. The United States is super dominating, and we need Russia, China, India, all these big countries to come together with some kind of military, organization, so they can, have an impact and push back against U.S. so we can have this balance of power, so that countries like Israel cannot, do whatever they want regardless of what the law is. So that's what needs to happen. Thank you.
To think that the laws are being set by individuals who, according to them, understand the global stakes, the global dynamics and perspectives, and of course it will be, but actually it's a sort of a process that the world needs to undergo to see how they can redefine perspectives, policies that will favor more of mankind and make the world a safe place. While talking, we want to already aware the consequences, especially in terms of human lives, pertaining the crisis in the Middle East. To you, Mr. Cadogan, talking earlier on, we already mentioned that South Africa has been one of those nations in Africa that has been very vocal and intentional about seeing that justice is brought to the civilians, especially in Palestine. Now, the question is, even with the motion that the South African government, through the Minister of International Relations, Naledi Pandor, presented before the International Court of Justice, and with the reaction, there was some sort of, according to some pundit, the fact that the International Justice did not pronounce a judgment that will give for maybe Israel to put an end to the crisis or to the genocide perpetrated against Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, still brings to question the international justice and how it is being run. We can also notice that we've had leaders from the African continent that have been to the ICC, Laurent Gbagbo, others pertaining involvement in a crisis that led to the death of people. Today we are talking about 40,000 people who have already lost their lives or being injured as a result of the escalation of the crisis between Israel and Palestine. So with this, where can we put the international justice, and how independent is the court in ruling on issues like this, the situation in the Middle East and elsewhere?
Oh, such a very profound question. And it actually puts to us the fact that I raised earlier on, around global racism. There seems to be a hierarchy of some sort that puts the Europeans or the white people at the top of the human race, and then everybody else follows thereafter. So the institutions that we have, the United Nations, the International Court of Justice, the ICC, and many others that are there, you find that the bias is always there. The embodiment of the South African case that we took to the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, was the nature of the diversity of the team that went there. It was a very diverse team, reflective of the diversity of our nation in South Africa. And not only that, because those are just the optics and the embodiment, like I said, the case itself was based on a very strong domestic policy, driven by a constitutional democracy that says all lives matter. Respect for human life, you respect for human rights, and we were asking of the same when our government went into the International Court of Justice. There is a need for a recalibration of these institutions. The United Nations, like I said, the Security Council model that we have, it actually does not serve an equal world. It serves a world that seeks to create a unipolar world. Anything that is not West is wrong. Anything that is West and USA is right, irrespective of how it impacts on the law, international law, irrespective of how it impacts human rights, irrespective of how it impacts world economy, irrespective of how it impacts peace in the world. There is a need to say, how do we create a Security Council that serves the majority of the people in the world? How do we create a Security Council that is going to deliberate and decide on issues on the basis of sound judgment? Leadership has actually flown out the window globally. And you can see by the number of leaders that are chosen to sit at the top of governments across the world, in the East, in the West, everywhere. The quality of leadership is bad. The worse the leader, the more it becomes easier for the leader to rise to the top. Leaders are working on the fears of the populations in which they serve as a means of getting to be elected. Leaders are promising bringing happiness to their populations without really saying how they're going to do that. And they fuel anger and all of these narrow nationalistic ideas. Where is the rise of the nation at the expense of the rest of the people of the world? So it is important for us to really look at how we can make sure that these institutions serve the noble views around human rights, around justice, around stability and peace, around economic order that seeks to get everybody to prosper and not just some few. So this whole thing of creating of a rich cousin, poor cousin across the world is not very good for peace. So there is a need to really revamp this. And the onus is on the leaders in politics, is on the leaders in business, is on the leaders in the non-profit sector, and also the ordinary citizens of each country, the kind of leaders they vote into power. It's very important. They cannot just vote in anybody without seeing everything as to whether that leader is going to serve world peace. And I'm really focusing on those nations that matter.
Yeah.
Not because they are better than others, but the nations that are big enough to have an impact in the world so that when they say something, it impacts everybody. Yeah.
and how can the narratives be changed? Still in line with the international justice, we want to come back to it with you, Mr. Sethi. You know, with the crisis in the Donbass, the ICC issued an arrest warrant against Russian President Vladimir Putin. And according to some sources, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has already taken precautions or being worried about an imminent ICC warrant arrest for him and other influential people that have a say on the crisis happening in the Middle East. Do you see, of course, the ICC taking this bold step, or do you see the international justice having a strong say in the crisis and it having to mitigate the consequences and prevent the further escalation of the tensions that we find now in the Middle East and elsewhere?
Thank you so much, Miss Clarice. I want to just share my view, what I feel these situations, geopolitical situations from the last 2 years, what I am observing. You know, if you see all these organizations, those headquarters are based in the US, they are now mostly biased, if you see. Even if it's a United Nations, even if it's the ICJ, or even there are many more examples, the list goes on and on. Because the first thing, what the ICJ has given this arrest warrant against the president of Russia, which was totally like a joke for the world. And if you compare, if you make a comparison between the leader of Israel and if you make the comparison between with the leader of Russia, there is a huge difference. Russia is fighting this war against the people who are killing the civilians, the neo-Nazis people in the Donbass region. If you see from the last more than 10 years, from the 2014 till 2022, 2023, that why Russia started this special military operation. Russia never, if you see, had killed the civilians. They are fighting in those regions and they are supporting and protecting the civilians. They are only fighting against those enemies who has a neo-Nazis or Russophobia style mentality. And if you see the same, the leader of Israel, Mr. Netanyahu, what he is doing, he is destroying the whole country. For him, it doesn't matter whether it's a civilian, it's a family, children, young people, or an army soldier. So the ICJ here, you see clearly, is totally biased. Why they are sleeping right now against to take the action against the Israel? And why they have taken this false action against Russia? Because Russia has never, ever killed any civilian. From day one, they had made it clear. We never want to have any problem with the civilian people because we want to protect our citizens and we want to protect the citizens from other country also. We are fighting only against the military and the soldiers of the other country. So that is what I can say, which is not acceptable. And even you also know that this decision by the ICJ is not like a serious thing because nobody is taking it seriously because it's not correct. It's totally biased. Nobody is accepting it. And we hope that soon they should open their eyes and take the decision against Israel because Israel, they are doing the total genocide. If a country wants to fight a war with their neighbors, they should fight only with their terrorists and the military group, not with the civilians. What is the point of killing the civilians? Those people who are only living within their country, is it a mistake? Those people who just want to live with their happy families. And you see so many videos are available, even you cannot watch it from your eyes. how they are killing, kidnapping small childrens. What is their mistakes? All these neighboring countries are getting affected. You see now the situation with Egypt, the relations with all the neighboring countries are getting disturbed. You see the list: Jordan, Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, Lebanon. And at last, what it will give? Nothing. It will just destroy the mankind, the humanity. It will not set any example. It is just dividing the world into two different groups to make an indirect proxy wars against each other, to utilize those resources not to spread peace, rather they are destroying it. And I will repeat again that we, as the developing countries from the BRICS bloc, have a very strong role, because we need to intervene in this situation. Otherwise, the situation will get much more worse, because the West will, as soon as they will start to push inside, they will jump inside the situation, it will get worsened situation. Because now Israel has done strikes. Again, the Iran will do the strikes. So need to stop them to prevent this war to escalate much more. And this will definitely create a situation in the upcoming week when the prices of the oil and gas and the crude oil will jump, because approximately 31 to 32% of these oil and gas is from this Middle Eastern region for the whole world. And definitely it will affect. When you see about the international North-South corridor, Iran plays a very important role when we talk about the global business between the South Asian countries and the Middle East, Eurasian and Europe. The way, if you see the INSTC route, the International North-South Corridor, it is very much required, because if this war will go on, the whole international global trade will get disrupted from this.
And the ripple effect of such what we want to analyze and see how the major stakeholders can actually mitigate this. Professor LAEED just rejoined, and it's time we come to get to you. We have listened a lot about the narratives around the Middle East and other areas in the world that are actually experiencing some sort of turmoil or chaos at the moment. And when we look at all the major stakeholders that can play a pivotal role in addressing the situations, be it the political stakeholders, economic stakeholders, we do not also forget the role of the communication stakeholders, and this is where we talk about the media. So Professor LAEED, in your perspective as an information and communications specialist, we want to understand how the media narratives and social media, how the impacted perceptions of the conflict between Israel, Palestine, and Iran, and how, of course, can we use this platform to change the negative perspectives about the conflict and mitigate the effects. Professor LAEED? I think you should be answering the question, Mr. Ashio Eki, looking at the role of the media in addressing these perspectives or the different opinions of the crisis in the Middle East.
Well, we know the medias are biased, right? So they represent their view, the government's views, and so it's going to be very hard to see medias or media organizations that are neutral, that provide both sides of the story. You know, we have channels like this channel, For You Media, other channels, African media, others, in African countries that are providing, unbiased information that we can really trust. Where we depending on the side where you are, whether you are in the western side or the eastern side or wherever you are. It's always difficult to find media that are unbiased, because there's so much pressure in terms of communication, in terms of the way they have to share the critical information with the public. There's always pressure from government entities. There's always pressure from private organizations, private entities, lobby organization, lobby groups, all these, these people who want to buy, the media off in terms of communication, so that they don't communicate, or they communicate in a way that puts them in a better light. You see? If we look at this, what happened the other day in between when Iran bombed, sent some drones onto Israel. When you watch the American media, the European media, oh, it was a 99% perfect, situation. All the drones were, destroyed. Nothing happened. Everything was perfect, hanky dory. Nothing happened to Israel. But if you follow other media, especially if you go on YouTube or other neutral media organizations, they report the fact, just like I reported to you earlier about what the situation is, and that in terms of what happened really on the ground. And this is because we have they want to keep the people of the countries blind. They don't want them to be aware of exactly what happened, what are the real situation on the ground. So they have to obfuscate that. They have to find a way to hide information. But it's I think it's foolishness, because alternative media nowadays, with the internet, everybody can hear different point of views, and you can choose which media to watch, which information which media to get your information from. So. It's not just something that happens today. It's been always like that. We always know that in a world situation, the winner is the one that writes the story, right? That tells the story, because the loser doesn't have time to tell the story. He's a loser. He's busy trying to figure out how to survive. He doesn't have time to write the story. Whereas the winners go out there, they say, "Oh, we did this, we did that," and then this. They truncate the story, they tell whatever versions that suits them. So, what I like today is that no one country can have the monopoly of information today. Everybody can, get information from any situation, and we already know the point of views. And when it comes to the United States, for example, there are so many media organizations that allow everybody to be able to have different point of views. And same in Europe, although in Europe they are becoming a little bit more, it's becoming more difficult to have a variety of views, and they're even persecuting, individual people who are trying to provide, unbiased information. And we see that in France, we see that in Germany, we see that everybody wants to support Israel. Everybody has to support Israel. I was listening to a report the other day talking about the situation, in Germany that is worse than, it's like the Nazi regime at the time. Everybody has to support Israel, regardless whether you're a media organization or where you're on YouTube or whatever, it's, media you're using. They have to, because the government may attack you, they may sanction you, whatever they have to do to suppress that different point of view. And we say the same thing in France. People that are speaking on YouTube or on media, social media, they are being blackmailed, threatened to lose their job, their jobs, and it's happening every day. And this is the fear that people shouldn't be, especially African, right? So they don't want just global South in general to be aware of what is happening. But what I would say is that we have an opportunity with BRICS. The only way we're going to get out of this difficult cycle, it's been lasting for, 200 years now. The only way we're going to get out of this is to have an equal organization that could allow people of the South, the big South, I will say the big South, to have similar organizations or entities that are going to report what the Western organizations are putting out there. The reason I say that is because if you look at United Nations is blocked right now. There's nothing that can happen in the United Nations because they have veto powers. 5 people have veto powers over the whole world.
Yeah.
And nothing, they don't want to relinquish those powers. They want to control, who gets, whatever goes on at the United Nations. So if we have an opportunity to create a similar UN organization, but for the South, for the Big South, let's say, the BRICS Plus, right? We call it BRICS Plus. So if the BRICS put together another organization like that, where we can subscribe to and go there and try to solve world issues regardless of the point of views of European Americans, that will force them to change, because the only time people change is when their power is threatened. So if we put together a different World Bank, the BRICS World Bank, some kind of organization that looks like World Bank, and I know BRICS already have their banks.
Yeah.
I don't remember the name, but we have similar organizations, especially in the United Nations, where people can get together and try to solve conflicts, as opposed to showing their power, showing their strengths or their ego. That will have a different impact. That will have a big impact, and that will force the United Nations to be able to have the changes to how am I going to call it, the reorganization that's needed in that structure, so that it can reflect the current situation of the whole world. Africa doesn't belong there. Africa doesn't have anybody in the Security Council. There's so many different parts of the world.
But they chat
Latin
issues
America.
regarding the African continent, and that's very problematic, Mr. Eke?
Yes, it's problematic because, how many, we have 54 countries in Africa. How many countries are going to be part of the Security Council? How many? So we need to have a different structure. And African economy is growing. African population is 1.5 right now, 1.5 billion right now. In the next 20 years, probably going to be around 2 billion people and growing. So how are we going to reflect that in the current situation? Do you think the United States is going to relinquish its power? Do you think France is going to relinquish its veto power? Do you think England is going to relinquish its? No, they're not. So we have to put together new structure, based on the BRICS, current BRICS situation, organization, and build, other alternative organizations, so we can go there and solve world issues.
Indeed.
That's what we, yes.
Indeed, it's about solving world issues and not creating issues in the quest for power dynamics and to be at the helm of international relations. The say is how you own power and how this power is being owned. Just to comment a bit to what you said regarding the media, I think the plurality in the media world and with the advent of the internet has helped to kill the rhetorics that we find in mainstream media. And as you highlighted, I was discussing with some people whom I will not actually disclose here for some very obvious reasons based in the US. And actually, they are like there's some sort of propaganda on the media, and everything said about particularly Russia, it's very negative, and people are even afraid to visit the country. And that's where you see again the media rhetorics. But I think with independence and even private ownership of media organizations, narratives are changing, and that's why for you, media is actually here trying to give a balanced view of all the stakes involved and how we can chat constructively towards solving world's problem. Talking about solving the problem faced by the world, by the global world, we come again to the crisis in the Middle East. And if we want to put an end to the crisis, we need to relook the religious and cultural lines. And so, Mr. Cadogan, in your own perspective, what parameters can be used, particularly in terms of religion and culture, to be able to maybe create a potential or scope or avenues for the resolution of the conflict in the region?
Religious frameworks are not geared properly for unifying human beings across the world. My belief is that we need to find basic human constructs where we rebuild communities by learning again from the past. What is it that has happened in the past that has brought people together, that has brought people across cultures together, to such an extent that they are able to actually transcend their own religious beliefs? My belief is that the framework around values is the most appropriate one insofar as stemming the tide for conflict across countries, much of which is being fueled by religion and some of the other constructs that human beings have put on earth. There has been a move from the family-based kind of structure into a national-based kind of structure that allows for nations to build social cohesion across different population groups in the same country. We can learn from South Africa. Way back in the same time that the State of Israel was created in 1948, that's when the National Party came into power in South Africa and actually started the regime that was based on the same principles that the State of Israel was set up on. So there are those parallels. That's why you find that we are very much passionate as a nation to actually see parallels between us right in the southern tip of Africa and also the nation of Palestine and many other people across the world. So by cultivating that social cohesion in each country, it becomes easier then to borrow from some of the principles that the United Nations and many other organizations have been set upon. Even some regional organizations based in Asia that actually bring those countries together. The European Union, unfortunately, it also will need a revamp that is similar to what is required of the United Nations as a global body or as a regional body. If you go into Latin America, same thing. So that's how then you can build a collective of people across the world who value human life, people across the world who value human rights, people across the world who do not see a life that is more important than another, irrespective of race, irrespective of culture, irrespective of religion. Because religion also is more like each religion and each religious group, you'll find that they operate from a continuum where you have got the moderate part of that religion, whatever it is, whether Islam or Christian, and then the fundamentalist part of that religion. And it's the extremist views of religion that actually subsume the basic human rights to such an extent that if you are not with my God, then you are not with me, then it's my God against yours, and then we must go to fight. But if we just recognize human rights, humanity, and build systems across countries, across religions, across nations that are able to value human life, we will not have to contend with the trappings of religion and also the limitations of religious beliefs.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. CADOGAN. We're almost culminating the program, so we continue to advocate the possible solutions to the crisis. Coming back to you, SETHI, now you talked about advocating diplomacy towards solving this broad conflict, which has it's actually very deep now. But now I want us to understand how the conflict is actually affecting the maybe the formation or creation of alliances within and outside the region, both political, even economic, and social alliances.
Ms. Clarice, I just want to put a little pressure regarding this, that, if you see the history or the nature or the character of the West or the European country, is in respective to, I'm talking about the African continent. Till now, the world knows that the West always want to dominate. Why why the African countries never get a chance for their development? Because the West always want to control everything. Till now, still the African countries are fighting for their own rights, for their own development. All the African countries have a very, very much golden chance always to grow. All these things are controlled by the West. The same way, the West wants to control the part of Eurasian bloc. You can see, for example, how they want to control and take benefit out of the situation of Russia and Ukraine. It's the same thing. They want to control that because they never like the other countries to grow, to develop. Second thing also, I want to put a pressure that when we're talking about this conflict, as soon as the Western medias, what you have just said, they are trying to showcase according to their benefit. They want to showcase the world much more the negative or the fake side. Me as an example, from the last 2 years when this conflict has started, I'm already living here in the country. And you see how the West media has showcased to the whole world one side of a coin, which is totally fake. You already traveled to all those regions. You traveled all over here in the country during this conflict time. And now, the same way the West want to utilize this opportunity again for the conflict or the escalation in the Middle East to the world to narrate this point. Because, I want to say that this conflict in the Middle East, as it will turn into much more serious mode, much more into a serious war, it will create a big problem in the world. It will create big differences in terms of religious aspects. It will divide the world into like a Muslim religion and a Jewish. It will create a lot of anger between the religions, not between the countries. Because if you see here, as Mr. EKEU has said already, the leader of the country is not correct. Because of the wrong leader, the whole country is getting suffered. Because if you see the response of the people from Israel or from Iran, nobody wants war. Everybody wants to live their peaceful life. If you see from another point of view, it looks like this war is not between the countries. It's war because of the ego.
Absolutely.
That the leader wants, not the country. So I want to say in conclusion that somehow the Southern Bloc, the Southern Asian countries, and the Asian and the Eurasian countries plays a very strong role. And equally, the African countries have a very strong role to maintain and bring peace in this escalation issue, to de-escalate and stop this war. And the only way is to maintain strong dialogue through diplomacy, because nothing comes to solution without discussion.
Absolutely.
Until you make discussion, you will not come to the solution. Thank you so much.
Indeed, one can be tempted to say that the world is in turmoil because of lack of proper communication, because there is no compromise, no understanding among the parties in the world. And if we can have a better scope where we communicate on global issues with the intention of putting an end, and not to communicate because we want to see that this power is above this in terms of decision making, then it becomes very problematic. And of course, that last statement, Mr. SETHI, brought us to the next question, which we are directing to Mr. EKEU. It's about finding a peaceful solution to the crisis befalling the Middle East and elsewhere across the world. Now, the problematic or the bone of contention, Mr. EKEU, is the stakeholders that have the potentiality or the propensity to put this crisis at bay or even to stop. We know we can advocate, the African continent can write down its own proposals pertaining the call for cessation of hostilities. The other countries can come in, but then we also know that there are bodies that control the way things are done, and even with the diplomacy that is a great tool towards solving these problems, it still become very difficult if the willpower from the authorities that have the final say on situations like this is still not very recognized. It will be effort that will be swimming in the sea. So how can we actually understand the narratives and see how we can have this balance of opinion or balance of willpower, be it from the lower, maybe the lower floor to the upper floor, regarding those who make the decisions and or maybe define the policies across the globe?
Well, Ms. William, I think the United Nations was put in place for that purpose specifically, right? Was put in place for that purpose specifically to solve world, regional, or world issues. But the people, the Security Council, they are the ones that are creating the problem. For example, that vote that came up for the Palestinian state that the U.S. vetoed, had not, if the U.S. hadn't vetoed that proposal, it would have been gone to the General Assembly of the United Nations, and every country in the world would have a chance to vote for that. Okay, but if one group of countries have all the power, and there's no other recourse. If they put their veto in place, there's no other recourse to go around. That is not democracy. That is dictatorship. It's not normal that one country, the United States, one vote, is one man, one vote, one country, one vote, prevents 190 whatever other countries in the world to vote on a very important issue that concerns a group of people, or populations, and millions and millions and millions of people over, tens of, like 40, 50, 100 years. It's not acceptable that somebody has so much power to do that. So we have to find a way, to create other options that the world can use to bypass those veto powers. If there's no way to bypass those veto powers, for example, let's say if somebody vetoes a proposal, and then three other countries on the same Security Council get together and vote the same way, they can nullify, for example, that one person's veto, right? So that would be fairer. That would be fairer. Let's say the United States puts the veto on allowing Palestine to have its own state, and then Russia, China, I don't know, another country, Great Britain or France, who actually, all these three countries voted for that. France voted for that resolution, So if those three countries got together and voted for that resolution, then they can nullify the United States veto. If that was possible, that would have been a better outcome. But to be in a situation where one person vote can nullify every other country's vote, that is not fair. That is dictatorship. And that's why I'm saying it's going to be hard for us to get out of that, because the way it's set up, it's not taking into account the changes, the evolutions in the world, what is happening, different generations. There are Palestinian people who were born 50 years ago, and they haven't seen any light at the end of the tunnel. They've been in this war with Israel for generations, and their kids are going to go through the same thing. And those kids that are being born today, that are being killed, about 30,000, about 40,000 people that were killed. It's a genocide. But those people that are angry, they're going to grow up being, Hamas people, being part of Hamas. And this is what is happening today. Israel are trying to destroy Hamas. Hamas is getting stronger because people are joining Hamas. They're saying, if that's how you're going to behave with us, then we better join Hamas so we can defend ourselves. So that's why Israel can't win that war with Hamas. It's impossible. So, and that's the whole region is the same thing that's happening. So how do we solve it? Like I said, we have to have some kind of counter organizations that can allow, for the whole world to get together, to meet and solve real issues that are, that are very important to the world. If the only way, because of the fact that the way the Security Council is set up, the only way to make American change, or whoever, or all the 5 people in the Security Council to change, is to have another counter organization that can have the same kind of powers that the whole world can adhere to, and they can go there and solve, but in different rules, different setup, different rules that allow for the world to be at peace. We can't be in a situation like this. We're locked.
Okay.
We are in a tunnel that we can't see the light out of in the next 10, 50, 100 years. If we don't change the Security Council, it's going to be the same thing. So we have to counterbalance the Security Council with something else, and so that will allow us then to go and say, okay, if we go to United Nations and the United States block this, then we're going to go to the BRICS, let's say BRICS, United Organization, whatever, or Global South Organization, and we're going to go there and we're going to solve this problem.
Absolutely.
And this problem is going to be, the decision made in that organization has to be binding. It has to be binding, so that people who adhere to that organization know, if you come here, if you take a decision, it's binding on you. So that way we can move from the United Nations and go to the organization. And if the US and Europeans want to stay there and keep their veto power, fine. We create another organization that does not have any veto thing, not any veto power, that the majority of people vote, and that way we can express the views of the world for every situation that happens in the world. That's the only way we can get away with.
Okay, thank you so much, Ms. Eki. Indeed, the world is a beautiful place for mankind, and if we can curtail the number of crises that we have, then we are going to enjoy the endowment of the world. I think it's time for us to go now, but I will take this opportunity now to say thank you so much to you, Achilles Eki, Good News CADOGAN, and RISHABH SETHI for your great insight on this very important topic. Global Insight, I must reiterate, has an objective to chat constructively and bring a positive aspect of issues affecting the global world, and see how we can attain a milestone towards solving the conflicts that have befallen the world. Thank you. We apologize. We couldn't get through to Professor LAEED from Algeria. We apologize for that, sir. Looking forward to having you soonest. Also thanking our technicians for ensuring that this program was a success. Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, who have chosen to actually remain glued to the Pan-African television for you, Media Africa. We pray that you have a blissful weekend in the company of our transmission, and it is on this note that I will draw the curtains into today's edition of the program. Do have a lovely time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.